Okay, so you might not have the same vision of me after this story, but I'm totally cool with that. So I'm going to talk about my time in jail. So in 2013, I was charged with possession for the purpose of trafficking. I sold to an undercover cop. I don't know if I can use the actual words in the video, so I'm going to be careful, but I sold stuff to an undercover cop. I'm going to tell you how I got started in this whole lifestyle and everything, and I'm going to speak about my whole experience. So basically, I was working a phone. So like, there was this phone in the town I lived that had been known to sell narcotics. People just had to call this number and literally someone would arrive within 10 minutes. And it was 24 hours. And this phone had been around for like 10 years before I started answering it. That's how it works in Canada. Well, in British Columbia specifically. I can't speak to anywhere else, but I know like tons of people over the years, tons of friends that have had this same kind of job. In British Columbia, this job is like kind of part of the economy. So no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, how it worked is you would have the phone for 12 hours at a time, a certain number of days a week, and you had a fake name, and there was like a boss above us who made sure we always had what we need, and they made sure to take their money. Usually at the end of the 12 hours, you would just go home with everything and do that, and then usually after like your third shift, the boss would come meet you and grab all the money and make sure, because when you're holding that much cash, like if you had that phone, you would have in your possession at the end of 12 hours probably like $4,000, because you're making like $40 sales for 12 hours straight, right? I don't even really want to use the term that's called when you're conducting your business that way. It starts with dial, so you can figure out the rest. I was in that kind of operation when I was a teenager. Basically how it started is when I was a kid, I saw my dad buy off certain people, and those same people he was buying off were the guys who are now like the OGs that ran this whole operation. And I would see these guys at the gym when I was a teenager, and I always like kind of looked up to them. I thought they were cool, and like I recognized some of them from when I was like a little kid, because they're like maybe 10 years older than me. These guys were like, they basically looked like they just straight up stepped out of Jersey Shore. That's how they looked all the time. That was their look. And we were in the Jersey Shore era in that time, right? So basically these guys were like, in my eyes, big time gangsters, like the people you want to know, right? And in my small town, they were like celebrities, basically. So it's like, if you knew these people, you were cool. Like if you could drop their name and stuff. And that's how they get the kids, right? That's how they get the kids working for them and doing all that crap and doing their dirty work. And this is like 15 years ago too. The game has changed so much, because I started with these guys in like 2010. I was like 15, 16, and I just approached one of them at the gym one day, and I was already like selling grass, so like I was kind of known for that. So I approached the guy and I said like, hey, I know what you do, I want to start making money. And he looked at me like I'm insane, because he's like this big juice monkey, I'm this little like 16-year-old kid. And he said, do you have your driver's license? And I said no. And he said, okay, well, talk to me when you do. And then I think I bugged him like a week later. I pulled the whole like, hey, are you hiring yet? And I did that so much to the point where he finally was like, okay, you want to work? You have to pay me $250 every time you get the phone for 12 hours. So they were his shifts. He had like 5 shifts that were designated to him. He owned them. There was like 5 guys who owned the shifts and the managers above. Things changed. Someone else like took over and changed up the way that the hierarchy works. But basically, these 5 guys that started the phone operation, they all had rights to the certain days of the week. It was very professional. Like, I've tried explaining this operation to people over the years. No one gets it, because it's like pretty fucking crazy. And like the phone, if the cops took the phone, because they would always bust people. Like, if you were one of the guys answering the phone, I don't know how I did it for so long without getting busted, because like it was a BlackBerry phone back in the day, and it was just ringing nonstop off the hook. I'd be on the phone and it'd be ringing with like 5 other calls, especially in like 2010, before the synthetic drugs made their way here. It was intense. It was like there would be nights where I'd have like $6,000, all from like $40 sales. That's a lot. And that's a lot. That's very busy. And like cops following me, getting pulled over, having to throw stuff out the window, getting strip searched on the side of the highway. This was like a weekly incident. I lived in a small town that had a very, very big drug problem, and even bigger now with the synthetic drugs. Guess what happened? Eventually, one of my coworkers got busted who didn't like me because I was hooking up with his girlfriend at the time. She was my girlfriend first. Again, I come from a small town and not the best people. So he rats me out to the cops, and the cops make a deal with him saying that, okay, if they add them into the phone and get them to buy off me, he's off the hook because he got busted. So basically he added the cop into the phone as a customer, and the cop called me, and I already made a sale like 6 months before. This is a long time coming. Sometimes they buy off you for like a year till they hit you with charges. That's what happened to me. And basically the guy who ratted me out, after he added the cop into the phone, no one knew he got busted. He got a job offer for some other groups to work their phones in a different city in Victoria, and he left. He went there. So he ratted us all out, and then he went and lived happily ever after, but his life's fucking crazy, so it's not that great. But karma's a bitch. And anyway, I sold to the cop, and I got busted, and I got out on bail with a 6 p.m. curfew and a whole bunch of conditions, and I had to wait for court, and I had to fight the case because my case was so unique. I was the first or second person in Canada to be charged under Steven Harper's, at the time, new tough on crime drug laws. In 2012, Harper introduced some new laws where if you get caught selling drugs, it doesn't matter how little or how much, you automatically go to jail for 2.5 years. So you go to a penitentiary with guys who are doing life sentences. But 4 months before I got busted, another guy in the same group on the same phone got busted. He got busted with the same amount as me. He sold to the same undercover cop as me, and he got basically a community sentence. So he had to go to probation. Probation. 6 months later, though, they implemented these new laws, and then I got hit with it, and the cops were like, right from the get-go, they hit me with that because my lawyer was surprised. She was like, wow, they waited till this new law got introduced, then they got you. The cops really didn't like you. They really did not like me in my hometown. I was always getting into fights, always causing mayhem, always causing problems, screwing people over, like robbing people, just crazy shit, right? And cops did not like me, and they waited till those new charges came in and they hit me with it. So I pled guilty. I said, yeah, this is like, I'm taking full responsibility here, but I'm not going to the pen. I want to go to a provincial jail. I wanted to go to jail, but not the pen. The pen, and even that was my lawyer's argument too. Like, you can't send this 19-year-old kid to a jail for a non-violent first-time drug offense, especially with his backstory, his history. They tried using my childhood as like to give me a softer punishment, which it did help a little bit, but that was my responsibility. Like, I'm responsible, not my childhood, and I learned, and I know that now, but at the time I was trying to take advantage of that and be like, I should get away with this because my parents were addicts. Like, of course the judge was like, I'm sending this knucklehead to jail. It's the best thing for him. And it was, because the jail I went to was a minimum security, basically work camp, and it was a treatment center too. It was for people who are non-violent. It was called Nanaimo Correctional Center in Brandon Lake. And when I was there, I just fooled around the whole time, didn't take anything serious. I worked out every day. Everything was a joke. And like, I almost got kicked out and sent to a really bad jail, because it's like jail with the right people, the camaraderie, it's like a locker room 24/7. And I took things a little bit too far. I pooped in a book. I cut out a square in the book and I pooped in it and I put it on the shelf and I left little notes in like different people's room and places to make them look for it. And eventually it got found and they made me speak to this guy named Doug Anderson. He was the, I think, psychiatrist, and Doug couldn't crack me. And that's the thing, like Doug, he tried to crack me and no, he couldn't. So all the psychological evaluations and like the way I've had to work the system over the years, it's like Doug Anderson stood no chance. And I probably scarred Doug Anderson for life. So Doug Anderson, if you're watching, I'd really like to hear from you and, you know, touch base and, you know, see where you're at. And yes, it was me who left that gift in the book after all these years. It was me, Doug. It was me, you know. Red-handed Doug, what can you say? What can you say? Have a great night, everybody.